Barry is in Hollywood, Florida, on Coast to Coast Wildcard line, open lines. Barry?
Hey, what's going on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you just great.
Okay. You've ever watched the movie X-Men with Wolverine and all those superheroes that have powers?
Seen all of them many times.
Okay. Well, it might. It's not a joke. This is serious. I gotta let you guys in on something, or let you in on something, and the viewers. I am a mutant. I've known this ever since I was 7 years old. I used to play in the back of my. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have any toys to play with, but I used to play in the trees in the backyard. And I fell from the tree one day, and I found out that I was able to land and levitate, but I just thought it was just something that maybe I hit my head on a branch or something. And I actually bumped into another child that lived close to my house, and he had also a power where he was able to sort of appear and disappear, but in a fast way. And I'm just calling to let you guys know that the portal, obviously, for 2012 is going to be open.
Okay, wait. You're jumping topics here. So you're as a mutant. To what do you attribute your mutant powers?
Well, I can't fall hard.
You can't fall hard.
I can't. I don't land hard. I jump off my roof, and right before I hit the ground, say probably 2 inches, I levitate, and I land. I just land smoothly.
Okay,
and,
let me again. I got to jump in here. So I'm sure you've told the story to many people over the years, and they raised an eye to you, and they went, "Barry, no way."
Actually, I haven't.
Have you ever demonstrated this ability to anybody?
Yes, I have. My girlfriend. I actually raised in a Christian family, very strict Christian family, and we didn't never have a great relationship with my father. He actually he was very physical, but we basically used to sit on the table, eat dinner, and hardly ever speak. Just eat and
that sounds awful. It sounds terrible. But what I want to know is, like, why, if you demonstrated that, why not you got to put that on YouTube, dude. You got to let people see it. Why not show people what you can do?
Well, actually, when you are different, and you really find out that you have some sort of powers, first of all, you're second guessing yourself, and then you're wondering, what are you here for? For a long time, I thought I was the devil or something. It just something didn't feel good. But I found a friend that had a certain type of, he basically can shift like really quick and appear pass by a tree and shift invisible and reappear. And basically,
wait, whoa. I got to make sure I understand this. You're looking at the tree. Your friend is on one side of the tree walking behind it, and they disappear behind the tree, and then they reappear on the other side a second later?
Yeah, he looks like a spiral. He spins like a spiral. He's younger than I am, but we stay in touch. And we were talking about opening up for the portal that's going to be opening. It's not going to be opening at 2012 December like everyone thinks. We have a couple of sources that basically got us into this little coalition of ours, and we have powers, and we are able to identify the portal's going to be opening it sometime around 2013, but in the beginning of 2013, not on 2012, but in the beginning of 2013. And we're going to be open. The portal's not going to be open long enough for, for parties or whatever. You have to be open.
For parties? What do you mean by it's not going to be open for parties? You mean for groups of more than 2 or 3, or?
There's a lot of people that's just going to celebrate for 2012 with, abusing the holiday, feeling as if it's, it's going to be a celebration, but it's really going to be an enlightening, an energizing experience. And if you're open, you will receive all of the beautiful powers and the knowledge and the gifts that heavens is going to allow you to have. And so there are mutants here on this planet Earth. And I want you to know the Wolverine thing, the X-Men thing is very, very much real. There's
I love
a lot
that,
of
but
people
let me ask you what you would do with that power that you have to not land hard. If that's your power, how do you use that for good? To not have to land hard.
Well, my girlfriend, she basically called me a freak for. That's how we basically fell in love, and she's pregnant now. But
I got it. You guys got freaky. I get that. My question is, how would you use that power?
Well, the funny thing is, I don't use it for anything. I basically.
But isn't that a waste of the power? Isn't that a waste of the gift?
Well, no, we basically consolidated. A lot of my friends, a lot of the mutant friends that I know, they're very close to us, we're going to open ourselves up for the maximum power during 2012. Okay. And whenever it arrives, you have to be open. So it's something involving your chakra and whatever. But what I'm saying is,
but I was really just focusing on it. I got to get into some other callers here, but I'm just going to say, I think you have an obligation. If you know nothing from the X-Men, you know two things. That, really is that you have an obligation to do something good with this mutant power that you have.
Can I tell you?
But wait.
Can I tell you something real quick?
I'm going to finish. I got to finish, Barry. And then the other thing is that if you don't make yourself known, then you can't help others. And the story of X-Men is that you have to lead other people out of the bondage of the convention of society so that they feel free to come out and be who they truly are too. And if you have these powers, you should do that.
The reason why I haven't came out, the reason why my friends don't come out is because we are being watched. There's a lot of people that's waiting just to see who we are, and so they can probably kidnap us. It's not easy being a mutant, okay? I have a lot of friends that basically would never say that they're mutants. Only this 2012 thing had us consolidating all of our thoughts and all of our prayers to see if we can basically be enlightened to see what our purpose really is. But there's a lot of potential people in the government that's waiting on to see if they could probably kidnap us. We don't know.
Okay, all right. I got to get in some other people. But I strongly encourage you, Barry, to reconsider that position. I understand that wherever you are, there's a Senator Robert Kelly who's going to attempt to register you or, something like that. I understand that. You may have to experience some prejudice, but if you have this talent, if you have this gift, you're obligated to do something with it. And so whether it's because if you have to wait to the beginning of 2013, that's fine. But at some point, you need to share that gift. Otherwise, mazel on the upcoming birth of your child. Bubba is in Lakewood, Colorado on Coast to Coast.
Yeah, this is Bubba, Scout, and Rev. There's three of us, but we're all in Lakewood, and we're the only ones of a white op. We're not black ops. We're white ops.
What does that mean?
Yeah, we got evidence through the Defense Intelligence Agency to the Judge Advocate General at the Pentagon, because we're a military jurisdiction in a JAG complaint at the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And we can harass the military until they get troops here. And you never hear anything about us three because we are against the local law enforcement. We got evidence that they work with terrorists. That's why the Defense Intelligence Agency stepped in and took our evidence when your FBI, who's everybody's starting to hate, covered it up. And you never get to hear on enemy broadcasts in America that there's the victim side. You don't hear who they're arresting. You never hear from them. You only hear they have a press conference about the suspect they caught, and that's all you hear. You never hear the other side, and it's a crock. We found out firsthand because the Defense Intelligence Agency wanted the evidence that the FBI covered up for the local law. They tried to murder us, and we don't like that.
What did you do?
Nothing.
So wait. So they took three guys,
right?
And they said, we're going to kill these three guys for doing nothing.
Yeah, because they made up a false arrest. This happens every day in America.
What did they falsely accuse you of?
Well, we don't want to dignify their mouth, but it was.
Well, how am I going? You wanted all this time. So what is it that you're falsely accused of?
Some kind of murder plot. That's what it was. A murder.
All right, so you're falsely accused of, and you're going. I can't verify anything, obviously, because you guys are using pseudonyms. But so you had three guys, and they decided these three guys, we're going to frame them.
You're exactly right.
And then we're going to kill them.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
And this came up out of nowhere because you guys were sitting around in a diner. How did it all start?
They don't like that I live in one residence, a single-family house. I don't live with anybody. The other two live in these apartments, the two codependent female, and they didn't like that we were together, and they started other.
How are you together if you're living in three different places?
Well, we meet with each other, and they knew all three of us were hanging around together.
Wait. Are you in a polygamous relationship?
No, we just hang around.
You're just friends.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a scope on this. So three friends living in three different places, and and they don't like that, so they decide that you have to die.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, because we didn't do anything wrong. They make stuff up. We telling you the truth.
I can only take your word for it because I have no details.
Links about
wait, I gotta ask me. I don't care. Well, let me ask you a question. So they decided just one day, and so they came and they arrested you, and they said the charge is conspiracy to commit murder, or that they already said you did commit a murder. Which was it?
That kind of crap.
No. Which was it? Did you already? Are they accused you of committing a murder?
Yeah, and we were conspiring to do it.
Who was it that you?
No murder. There was no murder.
So who were you accused of conspiring to kill?
To tell you the truth, they didn't tell us. They made it up. I'm not kidding. And it went nowhere because they had no evidence. But what the prosecutor told a lawyer in the Jefferson County, famous for crimes and all sorts of garbage, they said, these people confessed. They told us we even confessed. And I said, what are they talking about? They had an audio tape with our voices confessing. I'm not kidding. We heard it ourselves. A former member of the Justice Department got it for us. His name was Ed O'Connor. He's famous in Colorado. He was a PI, but he used to work for the Justice Department. And, yeah, our voices were saying stuff that we never had a conversation. We know how.
So they faked your voices in a conspiracy.
Right. And we got that evidence, that audio tape, because we know what we're doing. And when the FBI, O'Connor said, take it to the FBI, only because we didn't want to do that. We know they cover things up, only so we had a record. Even through our 6th, 7th congressional district in Colorado, they took it. We said, take it to the U.S. Attorney General. Oh, we didn't care where and behind our back, they took it to the main office in D.C. And it's signed by the deputy director of the FBI. We reviewed the tape. They didn't even
and so they faked, because you all were friends living in two different places, they decided you had to die, so they faked a conspiracy by faking your voices on a tape, admitting to a conspiracy.
They've done other frame-ups, too. It's known it's called Eastern Kentucky University School of Criminal Justice. They do what they call case studies of people who've been murdered in Lakewood and Jefferson County, Colorado. And I didn't know about that, but we...
Okay, I will look into that. Now you're giving me something to look into. So Eastern Kentucky... They have a program looking into Lakewood, Colorado. Okay.
Yeah, they have books on it. One's called Introduction to Homicide, and it was printed by Nova Southeastern University Press.
Okay.
Used in their school, and it's all about how This Colorado is a murder and cover-up capital. We know stuff about it.
Okay, wait. I will go look in that, and that'll give me something to go on. And then, so we'll leave it there for now, because I've got many other people who are hanging on, but it gives me something to start with, and I will look into it. And maybe, I mean, if what you're saying is true, that they just decided 2 people, 3 people who are friends must die, then, and there's some sort of paper trail or some sort of legal paper trail on this, fascinating. We'll go from there. The theories about the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa, not so much about his disappearance, just what happened to his body. I mean, I think it's a given Jimmy Hoffa's dead, but how come we can't ever come up with any forensic evidence as to that disappearance? Well, if you saw the movie Hoffa with Jack Nicholson and Danny DeVito, then you know the theory is that he was killed while sitting in the back seat of the car next to his car. His car was found that day, but that he got into somebody's back seat, was shot, killed, and then that car was immediately driven into the back of like a moving truck and then taken out of there so that nobody ever saw what happened to the body or the other car. But there is a theory that I like, and there's been a few deathbed confessions of people involved with the mob. And in one story called the Hoffa Files, the missing body of Jimmy Hoffa, the speculation is that both the hit and the disposal of the body was orchestrated by the mob. He was not buried at that Michigan farm that they dug up for a whole summer, or at, Giant Stadium, or in a swamp, or chopped into dog food. But rather, there was a guy named Frank the Irishman Sheerhan, who was a Teamster official, Hoffa confidant, and mafia hitman. And I'm going to read here the words of somebody famous who said, near the end of the Irishman's life, he was dying of cancer. He confessed to his longtime lawyer, Charles Brandt, that it was he who gunned down Hoffa at a house in Detroit. So they would have taken Hoffa from where he was, and they drove him to a house where there was going to be a meeting. And he walked in, and he saw a guy, the Irishman, a guy he knew, and may never have suspected that he was being led to slaughter. But also inside the house, there were 2 cleaners who were waiting for him, and the Irishman said that he just shot him down right there. Charles Brandt, his attorney, taking the deathbed confession, said, how many shots were fired at Jimmy Hoffa? Frank Sheerhan said, 2. You were the shooter? That's right. Charles Brandt wrote a book based on this confession called I Heard You Paint Houses. It also talked about what happened to the body, that after the cleaners were working on the house, the body was taken immediately to an incinerator, a funeral parlor. That's what Frank Sheerhan, the Irishman, said. Yeah, and how was it connected? They were friends of the people in Detroit. So within minutes of Jimmy Hoffa's death, he was already being loaded into a crematory, never to be heard from or heard about from the people that witnessed it again. Just put into an incinerator and cremated. That, according to the blog called the Hoffa Files, the missing body of Jimmy Hoffa, that piece having been written by our very own George Knapp here on Coast to Coast. Attaboy, George. I think it's a really interesting piece, and I admire your investigative reporting skills, still trying to get to the bottom of that story, too. All right, let's start with Darnell, who's been waiting the longest on Coast to Coast. Let's go east of the Rockies on Coast to Coast. Hey, Darnell.
Yeah, hey.
Thanks for your patience in Detroit. So it's open lines.
Yeah, I just want to talk about, some real live supernatural activities over here in my neighborhood, on my block, that
Tell me about that.
I've been experiencing since I've been like 3 years old.
In Detroit?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your neighborhood?
Beg pardon?
What's the neighborhood?
I'm over here off of Schoolcraft between Greenfield and Southfield Road.
Okay. And what's unusual that happens there?
But basically, I got some real live shadow people living next door to me.
In a whole, like a family of shadow people?
Different individual peoples or whatever it is, the next door neighbor. I've seen her wipe curses on my parents' house 2 times.
Tell me what you mean by that.
They
I don't know.
From across the street, they there's a whole bunch of activity going on over here since I've been in elementary school.
I believe you, but I mean, tell me about the curses. I want to understand what you said about the curses. You said that really fast, so I wasn't sure what you meant by that.
Next door neighbor, she don't live on the block no more, but I've seen her 2 times wipe a curse on my parents' house.
What does that mean, wipe a curse?
She had something in the plastic bag, wiping it on a door, around a door frame.
Really?
Yeah, and I called the psychic. They told me she put a curse on the house or whatever.
Huh. What did you feel an effect from that?
I've been feeling... basically, they don't know. The same people who they dealing with, the same people who've been bothering me since I've been a little kid.
Huh. But, I mean, they wiped a curse. Now, was there an effect of that cause? Like, did something happen as a result of that?
A spirit came through the wall, grabbed me out the bed by my ankle, and it dropped me on my head, and I passed out. I was swinging at it, my arm was going through, and I fell on my head. It dropped me, and I passed out.
So the people that were next door, they left, but they left behind, if I'm getting you correctly, kind of a shadow version of themselves?
Well, basically, these are people that allegedly moved in. They try to make like their house is vacant, but it's basically the shadow people over there living. People that I've seen with my own 2 eyes, a dark shadow and like a cloud of puff of smoke. It's like demon body possession, demonic possession of someone's body, where they be tapping on you and you hear the voices in your ear, whispering in your ear. And the people across the street had a dial in a window with a moon crest and a star on his forehead. I guess they was doing some voodoo stuff. I've seen that before back in the early 90s to some other people's house that the same group of people did the same thing to them too. And I did the same thing done while I was a little kid before I went to elementary school. I'm 40 years old now.
So was there a lot of voodoo in your neighborhood that people would use?
It's people. This is a guy that I used to go to elementary school with. He used to say, I walk a mile in your shoes. And now I found out that's a demonic possession. And when somebody says you need to go take a cruise, that means they're going to put a spell on you. Different people have different code words.
Well, I will remember that. And thank you. I'm grateful that you hung on as long as you did. Thank you, Darnell. So, Ace, thanks for hanging on, and thanks for calling back. Our thoughts are with you.
Thanks for having me, Ian. The reason I wanted to call was to piggyback off of Project MK Ultra that was made possible from Operation Paperclip. I am a targeted individual. Project MK Ultra has never stopped. The CIA came out and said they stopped it in the 1970s. How Shooters Are Made is a program I am in.
I don't know what that... How
Active Shooters Are Made is a program that I am in.
How Active Shooters Are Made is a program that you are in.
It's an off-branch of MK Ultra.
And that you are being trained to become an active shooter.
I was my whole life. There was a rumor going around in my school that I was going to shoot up a school due to a friend's death. And I was going to make a hit list and was going to shoot up the jocks at the school I was at.
Okay.
This was before Columbine.
Why are you still in this program?
There's different off branches to Project MK Ultra. There's different types of MK Ultra.
I don't care. Why are you involved in any way with a program where you would end up shooting people?
Because that's how shooters are made. This is against my will. This is against our will. Target individuals around the world. We are.
How could you be against your will and you're calling a radio show?
It is my will that I'm calling. The D.C. Navy Yard shooter, Aaron Alexis, when he carved on his weapon, this is my ELF weapon. It stands for extremely low frequencies.
Okay, but I'm talking about you. So why are you still involved in this program? Why haven't you taken all of the evidence? Why haven't you taken all of your connections and blown the lid off this thing? If this is true, and we're just two guys on a phone, but if this is true and everything you're saying is 100% verifiable, why are you still involved? And what's the profit other than in becoming complicit in being a merchant of death for innocent people?
I've been trying to expose this for a long time, for a very long time. I went down to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Buffalo, New York, to have this exposed with two agents named Randy and Mike.
Okay, but they fine. You got two boneheads in the FBI. What
Absolutely.
is it? I mean, go to if you've got what kind of evidence do you have that this is true?
I have X-ray evidence of a chip in my leg. I network with a former NSA whistleblower, Karen Melton Stewart. Kirk.
I don't know these names, so I can't verify. When you start doing last names, we can't do that. So, but let me ask you, what have you if you've got evidence?
Absolutely.
And you've gone to have you gone to a local university? Have you talked to investigative reporters? Have you showed them and you say, I will go undercover. I'll wear a wire to the next meeting of this thing where they're teaching you, forcing you to become an active shooter?
It's all done through subliminal messages, so ELF, which is extremely low frequencies. It's called V2K, which is done with first operation in Desert Storm was when the Marines went up against I think it was like 1,000 Iraqi soldiers. They used S-Squad.
I'm asking about you. I'm asking about you. So you're saying your messages come to you ultra low frequency so that there is no evidence of them receiving these messages?
That's ELF, extremely low frequencies.
Yeah, that's what I just said. So, fine. So what is it that you're saying that they send you these messages saying you need to go do this thing, and this is, you believe, the CIA that's doing it?
It's done through Fusion Centers, COINTELPRO Group, Project Monarch, Project Reborn. It's done through all of it. This is how active shooters are made.
Okay. You and I are going to disagree on that. I'm not saying that. Wait. You and I are going to disagree that active shooters are made because they're pinpointed by the CIA and they're turned into robots and shooting machines and whatever. I don't believe that. But I'm going to put that aside for now. I'm more worried about you. If that's what you're being made, if this is your experience, then I think you have a moral obligation to do more to be stopped before you become the active shooter. Because you're saying in high school was the first time that you were accused of this. How old are you now?
I'm now 40 years old. I'll be 41.
Okay, so how come you haven't shot up anything yet?
Because I'm a Christian. By the grace of God, I'm not doing what they want to do. It's because of Christ that I'm able to. So you're able to,
through prayer, you're able to resist
Absolutely.
These ultra low frequency things. Are you out there with that message to other people that you believe are being instructed by the CIA to become active shooters to say, use religion to keep away those messages?
To use the name of Yahshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, absolutely. I have a target individual group. I have a private group that's been deemed as a terrorist organization legally, and I had to legally deem it as a 3%er group, as a militia group. It's called TINWO Resistance 1776 on Facebook.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. I'll go take a look. Appreciate the heads up. I'm glad you're not doing it. I'm glad that you are resisting it, and that if this is what's happening to you, that people are getting through to you with these messages, that you're getting the help that you need, and that you're helping other people in the process. He sent me a link to a story about a guy named Ray Gricar, who is the former Republican district attorney for Center County, Pennsylvania, who is listed as a missing person April 15th, 2005, according to his wiki page, after taking the day off to possibly travel to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. His car, a red Mini Cooper, was discovered abandoned in a parking lot in Lewisburg. His keys, wallet, and sunglasses were missing. The car was opened by authorities, and though he was not a smoker, the red Mini Cooper was discovered to have a faint smell of smoke and trace amounts of cigarette ash in it. This missing person case is widely regarded as one of the strangest in Pennsylvania due to the lack of any usable evidence and his impending retirement after several terms in office. What was the motive? This guy, Ray Gricar, I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly, is also the subject of much speculation because in 2005, about 6 months after his disappearance, his laptop was discovered in the Susquehanna. The hard drive was recovered 2 months later. So the laptop was found without the hard drive. Then the hard drive was found, but was physically damaged to the point of containing no retrievable information, according to the FBI. 4 years later, police reported that Gricar had made web searches for information on how to destroy a hard drive. He researched, for example, quote, water damage to a notebook computer and how to wreck a hard drive. This new evidence seems to suggest that foul play was unlikely. More likely, he walked away or committed suicide. The investigation is ongoing. But if you're going to commit suicide, why kill the hard drive? Why? I mean, it seems like a long way to go to do that, but that's just what it's like sometimes when it comes to people disappearing. We really just don't have any idea. In the news box down there, bottom of the fold, you'll see there's a story, a link to a woman who has no fear. We were talking about this maybe a few Fridays ago, I think, when I was filling in, or maybe it was a Saturday night show, but the art of nonconformity was the guest, and he had really come up with this really cool approach to nonconformity. And it seems odd that you have to sort of teach nonconformity, but in a world in which we're raised to kind of go along to get along, sometimes nonconformity is something that is a learned behavior. So, but the art of nonconformity was a subject, and we were talking about that very same kind of sloganeering. What would you do if you had no fear? What would your life be like if you had no fear? And then we took some calls, and I thought it was very interesting. But that's what this story of this woman is about. Her amygdala is damaged, and so she has no fear of anything. She has normal emotional responses, love, hate. You know, she can have many. She's perfectly fine. Her intellect is fine or above average. I can't remember, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with her per se, except that her amygdala had become perforated in such a way that it sort of lost its integrity, and that part of her brain then doesn't function in producing fear or even respect. So when we say fear, she not only doesn't have any problem with anything that many people do, you know, snakes, spiders, haunted houses, scary movies, they mean nothing to her. The story talks about how she was being assaulted in a park because her amygdala was damaged. She was walking through a park at dusk, and a scary druggy kind of guy said, "Hey, come here." And she said, "Okay." And she walked right over to him. He pulled a knife and put it up to her neck. But as the story tells, and you can find it linked up at coasttocoastam.com, she heard a choir rehearsing in the background in a church near the park. She just heard a choir. And she said to the guy, "If you kill me, you'll have to go through God's angels first." That's roughly the quote. I mean, what an odd thing to say, but she heard the choir and she had no fear, so she just said that. And the guy was totally confused by her response, and he ran away. But to bring that back to what we were just talking about PTSD, is that researchers are looking at her brain and the role of the amygdala and being able to perhaps kind of turn it off as a treatment for people with PTSD, with returning soldiers still suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder who have a sort of a badly programmed fear response. They have been conditioned oddly around those fears. And I say oddly meaning not unpredictably, but it means in such a way that they can't control it. And that's where PTSD it may be going, is looking at the amygdala and finding out, perhaps there's a way that they can just turn that down or turn it off, and have soldiers, lose that PTSD. The scary part of that would be having soldiers without an amygdala and what that might be like for the battlefield. if the government ever found a way to turn off your fear response to make you into a super soldier where you would do anything, fear nothing, go anywhere, the question philosophically that hit me as I thought about that is would that make you a better soldier, or would that make you a poorer soldier? Because if you don't have a fear response, would you be making good decisions out on the battlefield? Would you just everybody be running across the field going, ah? You know, I mean, they don't care. Or is our fear response something that helps inform us as we go along and keeps us alive and makes us keep our buddies alive too? First time caller line, Doug is in Nashville on Coast to Coast. Doug?
Hello, Ian. How are you?
Good. Where are you going to take us?
Well, you know, it's kind of embarrassing, but this really did happen. But me and my wife used to run husband and wife team, and we went all 48 states and stuff. And this was back in 1990, 91. And we was in West Texas. We was on 10 or 20. You know, whenever you leave El Paso and you're going east.
Yep, and, I know it.
Okay, there's a split. You know, you go up, and I can't remember. And I don't know if it was before the split or after the split on 20. But because I was going to get on 20 and, you know, go, because we was going east coast. But anyway, like 2:30 in the morning, and I'm driving along. I'm listening to Tarzan on the radio, you know, because this is back in the 90s, you know. I had books on CD, you know. And it's dark. I mean, there's no moon, it's pitch black, and all I see is just my headlights in front of me, just my, you know, beam of headlights, right?
Right.
And this pterodactyl, I know it sounds stupid, it sounds unbelievable, but it happened, just floated right across my headlights, and it sucked his wings in and, you know, brought him out, you know, and it flapped just like a bat does, you know. They kind of brought him in, brought him out one time, and it was so large that when its beak was on the left side of the road, like where the road would stop at, and it would go to the sand, you know, because, you know, in the desert out there, right? And the tail was over the shoulder. It was that long. It crossed both lanes in the shoulder as it, you know, just went across. And it was right in front of me. You know, I had my brights on, of course. So, you know, it was maybe, 100 feet in front of me when it did it.
Right.
It was that close. And I've never been so scared in my life. It flipped me out.
Well, you know, we've had this conversation on Coast to Coast. You know that there's ongoing research in, depending on who you talk to culturally, you could, some people call them Thunderbirds. Some people are saying they're cryptozoological remnants, like a kind of pterodactyl, like a pterodon or something like that. And I know that South Texas is where that sort of thing is seen more often, but that's not too far from what you're talking about. You're right. You're El Paso. You're West Texas, right? If that's where that sighting took place.
It's where the mountains.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. South of New Mexico, right?
Yeah.
That's like ski territory up there. Those mountains are so big. So. I'm with you. I mean, I think that this is, and what we've talked about this before. What's interesting about this is perspective, and that things that other people can look at, and depending on what their line of sight is and what their frame of reference is, things that are big can look small. Right? Like a jet in the sky can look like a starling if it's up high enough and you're not expecting it to. And things that are small can look big depending on how close it was to us. So, yeah, dude, I wish I could give you more information other than if you go online and look for it, there are books on these modern sightings of flying monsters.
You know, and it had the head, because I was, within 125 feet of it, 150 at the most.
Sure.
I wasn't very far from it when it went across, And, it was probably, I was in a cab over because it's 1990, cab overs were prevalent back then, and it was probably just tall enough, high enough in the air where I would go over it, where I would go under it. It was up, but it was low on the ground. And it didn't have feathers. It looked just like what they show in those books. It was the real deal. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it flipped me out.
I totally get it. So, but let me also be clear about some other things birds that do have feathers can still have very closely cropped feathers that don't necessarily show up, right? And just to make the point, pelicans have the same shaped heads, right? They make the point at the end of Jurassic Park. So there's a physical formation that's very familiar. Now, could it have been, and this is what some people claim, against cryptozoological appearances? They'll say, well, this is a diseased bird. This is a regular bird, a big giant pelican that has lost a lot of its feathers, like a dog has mange or something like that. I'm with you, but
you're not going to convince me of anything.
I'm not trying to. What I'm saying is,
I know. I mean, I get that, but it looked leathery.
Yeah,
it was brown.
Right.
That color. It was the wings were thin. They weren't thick.
Right.
I mean,
they were translucent. You could see through the skin of the.
No, you couldn't see through them.
Okay.
No.
Well, that's interesting.
But I could see the bone. Where they're kind of elbowy.
Right.
Sure. I guess that'd be the best way for me to explain it. But it was freaky. It was. Well, it's one of those things that when you see it, you remember it for the rest of your life. Because, like I said, that was what 30.
Yeah, I hope I do.
Ago anyway. Yeah,
and there was a rash of sightings of those things about 30 years ago too. So it might be time to revisit that subject on Coast to Coast. I'll put in a reminder. See what we've got.
But
Cornelius, what do you do, Cornelius?
Okay, that's what I was going to get to, Mr. Ian Punnett. I used to be a military police officer, and I had like a top secret to secret clearance because we'd have to guard people, places, and things.
Sure.
And so what happened, I worked for the federal government as a military police officer and as a correctional officer at Oakdale. And they said I threatened to kill the warden, so I lost my job behind that. But what happened was I had got a bunch of death threats and stuff, and the FBI never did help me out or do anything for me. So I ended up going to prison for a little while.
No.
And, Ian, and it's just been messed up. So I've been trying to get a presidential pardon and stuff. So George and Tommy's been trying to help me out, but I'm working on like that. But when I wanted to call,
I hear that Tom Danheiser has those kind of connections. So you're talking to the right guy.
Yeah. But what I really called about was Brennan. Brennan should have lost his security clearance a long time ago. He voted for the Communist Party when he was younger. I don't know how he got a security clearance with that. And then he lied to Congress because he was spying on the Senate staffers and stuff. So he should have never been CIA or whatever he was. And I think just like once you leave the military police service, you lose your security clearance and stuff like that. So once you leave an agency or during the transition,
right? You know why they let him keep it, don't you? Though I mean, just for reference, you know why they let him keep him?
I understand that, Ian, but they need to let these people, especially that criticize the president. He doesn't know if he committed treason.
Well, yeah. I know that he's been mouthing off a lot. I'm not saying that, but I thought it's interesting to point out the reason why they want them to keep their security clearances because you never know if somebody has achieved that level of awareness and they've had that much exposure to these international situations and to people and to spies and whatever, they want to be able to know that they could call somebody at a moment's notice within the intelligence community and say, hey, we know that you used to be friendly with so-and-so in such and such a country. Tell us about them because now they're becoming the head of the military or whatever. And that's why it's not like they get like daily briefings or something. It's just that's why they maintain that clearance, is so that they can pick their brain if they need to. But I'm not defending Brennan. So don't get me wrong. But I think it's fair to know why they continue to give it to him. Right?
My dad made his 90th birthday on Friday. So I wanted to give him his props.
Is that today or last Friday?
It was yesterday. So he made 90 years old. They gave him a big birthday bash and stuff. He's in better shape than I am, Mr. Ian.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
For my old knees are messing with me. So pray for the old knees for Cornelius White Jr. and Cornelius White Sr.'s 90. Well,
I appreciate that, and it's got to be some of that. Got to be some of that Louisiana humidity isn't doing you any favors either. So, thank you, Cornelius.
I was wanted to talk about the education system and just how it's insulated from the capitalism system by being not for profit, and that's where the problem's starting. We've got every year they don't have to worry about going out and selling their product for new students. Their graduates, they don't have to warrant their product. And so they've got control of them for 16 years, and we've lost God in the schools. So
No. God never left the schools. We are not powerful enough to keep God out of schools. If you think that we can, I believe in a stronger God than that. So I disagree that God is wherever God wants to be, and we can't legislate God out of something.
Well, they're fighting very hard to make sure you don't discuss it. How's that?
Well, that's fine, but I can live with that because my kids got God in our house. And if they didn't get it in the school, that's fine. But God is everywhere God wants to be, and I believe that very strongly. I think it's I think when people
he's under attack in the system. But I guess my point being is teachers are insulated. They have a socialism life. They don't have to worry about again warranting their product. They don't worry about getting new clients, and they've got their pensions, and they think capitalism is bad.
I'm probably Gary. I'm going to stop and say I'm the son of a third grade public school teacher. Right. My mom is not a socialist. She didn't live a socialist life. She worked really hard to educate kids, and I think for all public school teachers out there, many of them are still underpaid. They're undervalued. And I'm just not going to cut them down here and put them in a category of being socialists.
Well,
I understand we'll disagree on that, but I just don't think that's true.
Well, what's coming out the other end, I'll tell you, my point is that at the end of the very first debate, that child asked a question about he was fixing to graduate, and his teachers told him, there's no jobs for you, and it's the fault of the capitalists. And the kid had never even worked in the capitalism system. How would he know? Right. That was the problem. It
was a stupid thing that a teacher said. I totally hear that. And I think we can all agree that there's lots of stupid comments that teachers make. And so let's hope that didn't forever keep the kid. Thank God the kid was corrected, and to realize that capitalism isn't going to keep this kid from working. That having been said, there are still some fields where there just aren't jobs yet. And let's hope that will change too.